everybody, welcome to this week's Roundup. No special announcements or anything, so let's jump right in. First up, 8BitDo has just opened pre-orders on the latest version of their Pro controller, which they're calling the Pro 3, and it comes in 3 different colors and will ship to customers in about a month. It's a bit pricey at about $70, but it comes with a charging dock as well as some pretty advanced features like the ability to swap the buttons around with a magnetic button puller so that you could swap it between stuff like the Switch and Xbox layouts. It's got the ability to switch between linear Hall effect triggers and non-linear tactile triggers, and has Bluetooth, wireless RF 2.4 gigahertz, and just wired USB as well. So overall, as long as it performs okay, it seems like one of these cases that it's just expensive, not overpriced. So you get what you pay for. As long as it performs okay, because 8BitDo has had a history of weird latency expectations with their controllers, with the previous Pro 2 controller having latency as low as 6 milliseconds via wired USB, which certainly isn't the fastest. We've seen 1 millisecond or lower, but it's definitely not bad at all. However, some wireless latency testing showed as high as 21 milliseconds. So as usual, 8BitDo hasn't put out any of their own lag test numbers. So unfortunately, it's going to be up to us to test it. So for me personally, if this thing performs well, then it seems awesome. And it seems like it's going to be worth every penny. But I'm not spending $70 to have 21 milliseconds of latency when I can get different controllers that have lower ones. And, everybody's different. Everybody reacts to lag different. What panel you're playing it on makes a giant difference. So it's certainly not going to be the end all for everybody who buys this thing. I just always like to share my own personal thoughts because even though I am far from a pro gamer, I am pretty sensitive to latency in most scenarios. So that's just something that's important to me. But as long as it performs okay with the charging dock and all those extra features, I think it's worth the money. So check out links if you're interested. Next is just a quick update from Analogue about their upcoming FPGA-based N64 console they're calling the Analogue 3D. And the update is simply that it should be shipping next month in August, and there won't be any additional charges to customers. They're going to be absorbing any of the shipping and import costs that have been added to it since this original pre-order was made, which really sucks for all companies that have to deal with that. It's great that they're helping out their customers, but it just makes me sad to hear companies have to do that. But that's really it. There's no info on if more of them will be available on launch day or if they're only going to be shipping pre-orders. There's really just absolutely no other info out there whatsoever. And, it's an analog console. So my guess is it's going to play great and that there's not going to be too many things that people complain about right away. And it's going to be just a good purchase. But you won't really know until good reviewers get it. And people who are experts at the N64 and hardware analysis are the reviews that I'm personally looking for. Now, I was lucky enough to have a friend ask me to do the pre-order for them so I could do a live stream when it arrives and then ship it on to them. But I am not an expert compared to a lot of my other friends in N64. So I'm going to really be looking for other channels who are doing deep dives into showing what to really expect. And of course, I'm going to be doing a live stream. I'll show the basic use of it and I'll give my thoughts. But as somebody who is not a hardcore N64 fan, I'm much more looking to other people's reviews than my own for this one. But whenever it arrives, I'm definitely going to be doing an unboxing and a live stream and just kind of share my thoughts. And hopefully anybody who's interested will come hang out for that. But really, I'm interested in a lot of other channels' perspective on this one. Next up, the Sony PDF sorting project is starting another round and is asking for your help just like last time. So to back up for a second, about a year and a half ago, the CRT Wiki section of the Console Mods Wiki scraped a ton of documents from multiple Sony websites from public backups. And the documents contained Sony memos that were sent out to distributors, service bulletins, service manuals, and all of the stuff that we need to keep this stuff alive. And the last sorting project took all of the stuff that was focused on BVM, PVM, SSM, and add-on cards. But this round is taking all of the documents for the rest of it, like consumer CRTs, PC CRT monitors, projectors and projector TVs, remotes, and basically everything else. So if you have the ability to help with stuff like this, which really is just as easy as going through the different documents and resorting by model number, their documents already sorted by model number, but you have to kind of go in through and fix the file names and a bunch of other stuff along with it. So basically, if you just have the ability to sort documents and want to help archive this stuff so that it's much easier to search and go through, please just sign up for a free wiki account and you could go through and just help all of us do that. All of the info that you need is right here in Durf's post. And last year when this was done, it was a tremendous help and made a lot of sorting or a lot of searching for this stuff a ton easier, because these are the things that we absolutely require in order to keep working on these things and know exactly what to expect, get the diagrams and all of that other stuff. So thanks very much to everybody who continues to participate in this stuff. Of course, thank you to Durf for doing all this crazy work, but let's all try to help out if we can and just spend a couple of minutes, if you want to, making this stuff easier for everybody to access. And once again, just check out the link or check out the post for everything that you need to know. Here's a big one for fans of the Sega Saturn. SED, the developer of the Fenrir optical drive emulator, has just launched the Fenrir Lite, which is essentially the same as the Fenrir Duo, but cheaper. It's about $60 plus shipping, and it's available now, although they'll start shipping on August 1st, as I think SED is on vacation or something like that. So they're in stock and ready to go. As soon as SED gets back, they'll start shipping, and supposedly it's just as functional as the Fenrir Duo, which means it could be installed in all versions of the Sega Saturn, not just ones that match whatever CD-ROM drive that you have, and it performs really well, just at a lower cost. And this is a pretty big deal for anybody with a Saturn that has a dead optical drive, because now you could just replace it with this, and it's even cheaper than the Saru, than the best version of the Saru, and actually is competitive in pricing to some of the much lower quality, cheaper versions of the Saru. So I just think this is absolutely awesome. It is so cool to be able to get into this stuff even cheaper. And I think for anybody that needs an optical drive replacement, this is absolutely the go-to. Or for people that can't use the Saru for compatibility reasons, because maybe the games that you want to play aren't fully compatible yet or whatever else. So this is absolutely awesome. But on top of that, SED also teased a better, faster, stronger version that they'll be showing more info of once the proof of concept is done. So I just couldn't have any better news for you if you're a fan of the Saturn. You still have the Saru, which is a plug-and-play device that needs no installation and allows you to retain the optical drive if that's what you want to do. And there's some advantages and shortcomings of that. Definitely check the chart the Shiro crew posted a while back just to figure out what's best for you. But if you decide that an actual ODE that sits inside your Saturn is the best bet, this seems like one of the best choices, if not the best choice, just because it's fully functional and less expensive. So thanks to SED for making this, and I'm really interested to see what the next version is going to be all about as well. This next post is just making people aware of a pretty cool project that Natalie the Nerd has been working on for a while now, where they've been taking PCBs from Game Boy consoles, or essentially Nintendo handhelds, and posting scans of just the PCB, but then also stripped scans of the copper mask as well. And they've even posted stuff like CPU pinouts and schematics when possible. So this is a very big deal for anybody who needs information on repairing or building stuff that has to do with these different consoles or handhelds, whatever you want to call it. On top of that, Natalie also sells some pretty cool stuff, like a device that's a drop-in replacement for an original Game Boy Color motherboard. So if you have a GBC that's all smashed up and broken or totally dead somehow, most likely the CPU and RAM from the original would be salvageable. So you could just pick this up and transplant the chips over, which isn't easy, but it's also not the hardest thing you could do, and basically have yourself a brand new Game Boy Color using original chips. So I really just wanted to help boost people's awareness that this wiki exists, and if you want info on it, to go there. There's obviously been a ton of different projects like this over the years, including the Strip Club PCB scanning archive, which I linked to in the post as well. But I just wanted to highlight cool stuff, and to be honest, I've had a few projects that Natalie's been working on in the queue to write about for a while now, and I can't remember why I didn't. At least one of them was because a product was posted for sale and then it went out of stock by the time I got to write the post, which nobody wants me to write posts about stuff you can't get. That just usually makes everybody angry, including the creators. But yeah, I don't know why I missed this until now. So my apologies, that certainly it wasn't intentional, but now you all know about it. So if you want, check out the store and the wiki and see some cool Game Boy stuff. And just a side nerd note here, even if you have no idea how to read schematics or how board layouts work, seeing the copper only scans is a pretty neat thing, because if you put them side by side on your monitor, you could kind of see what goes on behind the mask, I guess you could say. So I don't know, even if you're not really super excited about this stuff, just take a moment to scroll through the pictures. And I think, if you're a nerd like me, you would at least be like, oh, cool, that was neat. So thanks to Natalie for doing these. Next up, I posted the interview with Randy Linden on Monday, and man, what a cool guy. I just had an absolute blast talking with him. He was very easy to talk to, had amazing stories to tell, and has the ability to explain very technical stuff in a way that most people could enjoy it and understand it. So thanks so much to Randy for doing this. I'm really hoping someday to do a follow-up interview, maybe if Doom gets funded enough to fund the next project that they might work on together. I don't know. I've had a great time talking to him. And I do think that if you had some questions about the new SNES version of Doom, or if my explanation last week was only okay, definitely give this one a try, because I just think the way Randy explained it, you get a much better sense of how he got from there to here and what was done with this newer version, but also what could be done in the future with the homebrew scene. And that's something that I definitely want to highlight, is supporting this project, which I did, even though they sent me a pre-release copy. I definitely pre-ordered an official one, because supporting this means that you get to support other stuff that eventually gets to be open sourced for the community. So even if you're not really into Doom, or you have a new PC version of the original that runs at a gazillion frames per second and this isn't important to you, I do love that now there's Rumble support that's out there, and the FX3 chip will be out there at some point as well for people to use. So as always, if you want to hear any of these interviews, do it whatever is the easiest way for you. Generally, people tend to listen to these on audio-only podcast services. The video is available on YouTube, and whatever podcast services use video as well. But I mean this in a nice way. I don't care how you listen to it. You could download the MP3 directly from this and listen on whatever device you want. It doesn't matter. Just give it a listen, and that's all. The only thing that matters is just sharing these things and getting awesome people like Randy out there so you could hear directly from them. So wherever is the easiest to listen, do it that way. Links to absolutely everything, including the open source documentation, are all right here in the post. And I dropped a link to my terrible testing of the original, because I'm not good at the game, but at least you'd be able to see the difference between the original SNES Doom and this one, and see the Rumble code in action with Star Fox. But there's more to that in a second. And speaking of SNES homebrew with Rumble support, the developer Rumblemints has just posted his latest NES to SNES conversion, this time for Castlevania, and it includes Randy's code for Rumble support, which means if you have something like Blue Retro and an SNES receiver, you could use that, or you could just wait for the upcoming Rumble controller to be released, which you could just pre-order with the links I talked about before. But this is pretty awesome, but it's not just the Rumble support that makes this one cool. There's a couple of other things that really made it stand out. Now, of course, you get the advantages of all of these conversions, where there's far less sprite flicker and slowdown than the original, and that alone I think is enough to give these a try. But you're also able to access a couple of optional quality of life stuff, like changing the difficulty levels, ability to start in the second loop of the game. But there's even other things to choose from, like 14 different palettes, which is really important for NES games, because the way we played them all as kids relied on composite video and the decoders built into our TVs, which is why there's so many arguments about what the color of the sky in Super Mario Brothers should be, because many people could actually be right. Many people could be describing it the way that they saw it on their TV, and they're all correct. That's why NTSC composite video is always joked is never the same color. But so you could choose whichever palette looks best to your eyes, and just select it by the intro options, or while paused, you could press select to cycle through them. And there are 6 different MSU1 soundtracks, and you could also choose the soundtrack when you boot the game, or you could just pause it and select soundtracks with the L button, which is another feature that I think is awesome, especially for picky people like me, because while I generally prefer the original soundtracks to stuff, Sometimes I like the Famicom version, a fan-made version, whatever else. And to go a step further, sometimes I like different versions of different soundtracks. So one stage of the game, I might like one, another, I might like a different version. So the ability to swap them mid-game is very, very cool. It's also cool for live streams because you'd be able to just hear them back to back like that. There's also a couple other stuff, like you could hold a second sub weapon and swap with the R button, and you could access your other buttons with the X and A, I believe. So yeah, this is another awesome one. I'm going to be doing at some point, maybe today, maybe later this week, another live stream using different controllers. So I will absolutely try this one out as part of that. Of course, I want to use it with the Rumble controller as well, but I'm just going to be using these NES to SNES conversions to test that new D-pad I talked about a couple of weeks ago and do a bunch of other stuff like that, because some of these original NES games are really sensitive to stuff like that, and I think they're great ways to test. So if you want more info, absolutely check out all the links in the post. This stuff is completely free, and Rumble Mints will be at Retro World Expo as well, so you'll be able to come hang out and ask it questions and just chill with a cool dev if you want to come visit us there. But thanks for doing this, and I'm looking forward to trying a live stream with it. Now it's time for some Mr. Updates, care of Lou from Lou's Retro Source. As usual, I'm just going to skim through these, giving my thoughts where I feel like it, but if you want all the details and visual examples, please check out the video, which is also embedded right here on the post. First up, Mr. FPGA forum user Pepito just posted about some Atari Falcon chips being decapped. And the Falcon was Atari's final personal computer, so having the chips decapped could potentially allow for an accurate implementation of those, which is pretty cool. Next, there's a new way to remotely manage your MiSTer setups called Quarter MiSTer, and at the moment, people who support on Patreon have early access, but this is going to be something that's completely free for all users as soon as it releases publicly. I think they're just doing some beta testing. And there's a bunch of stuff that's working, so check out Lou's video or the post if you were interested in doing that. Next up, Hotego has released a beta core that runs Konami's shooter Ajax, and there are two types of stages in the game. Some play like a standard vertically scrolling shooter, and you control a helicopter, but others are pseudo 3D with some cool scaling effects, and in those you get to control a fighter jet. So this one is supporters only, but as always, Hotego stuff goes free once their bugs are worked out and it's out of beta. Hotego also gave an update for some future things that he'll be working on, including support for Run and Gun, a basketball game, and potentially CPS3 as well. Hotego also finished up is continuing to finish up work on open betas for the System 18 and Neo Geo Pocket Color, and I think there's just a few stuff that needs to be ironed out, so those hopefully will go public fairly soon. There's also been a ton of changes to the Atari 800 and 5200 cores by Waj with a whole list of cool stuff here. So if you're into those, definitely check that out. Next up, a video from the Mr. Multisystem team was posted showing Game Boy physical cartridges loaded. And Richard said that it's a proof of concept prototype, and they're working on a demo to show off the cartridge interface with more to show soon. So they'll release the info and ask the community if they want cartridge adapters made for sale. Testing various carts, interfaces, and functions should be something that they're currently working on and want info on. So that's neat. The Mr. Multisystem 2 might be able to just boot original cartridges, which is one step closer to making it feel like a real retro game console. So kudos to the team for doing that. Just a quick side note, that is not possible with the DE10 Nano with almost every console, because all of the pins of the FPGA are not available to access on that dev kit. Remember, the DE10 was just a developer's kit that was meant to help students learn how to work on FPGAs, but since the Mr. Multisystem 2 built their own into it, they could potentially have access to all the pins, which is why this would be possible. That is a gross oversimplification of it. No disrespect to Richard by explaining it that way. I just wanted to give a short thing so people wouldn't expect that that could be ported to existing setups, because it pretty much just can't. Next, the Zapparoo project has been updated, as well as the mobile and core service as well. And a major update to the core service is NAS support that has limited support for downloading and installing media from a remote URL, which is handy. It's probably not going to be the way most people do it, but it could certainly help out with just a couple of ROMs being transferred. But I don't know, maybe it's perfect. I haven't had a chance to try that one yet. Also, Mr. Organize, another project that will help you keep your games organized, has just pushed a July update with a bunch of different editions. I still haven't had a chance to try any of these, and I still really want one of these ported over to RetroNAS just to make it easier to have all of this in a central location. But anyway, thanks to the teams for working on these things, because I just think they're a big help for most people. I just would love to see a nerdy RetroNAS version. Next, an Atari System 2 FPGA core is in development by the same person who developed the System 1 core. It's in the very early stages, but it should be able to run games like Accelerator, Champion Sprint, Paperboy, and some others. There were also a couple of different updates, including for the Mega Drive core as well. So thanks to everybody who adds that stuff. And if you want more information and you want all of the details, definitely check out Lou's video. And of course, if you rely on Lou for getting this info out to you as much as I do, consider supporting on Patreon as well. And as always, just thanks to everybody who contributes to the Mr. Project and allows us to have access to all this very awesome stuff. Next up, Darksoft recently opened pre-orders on a Namco System 2 multi-kit for those arcade boards, and I missed the mark on this a little bit. This happened a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month or two ago, but there are still units left, so better late than never. You could get them at a couple of different stores. I linked to everything I can here in the post, and the price is about $550, but there's a few things to note. First of all, most of the Namco System 2 original games should be compatible with this, but not all. You need to pick the PCBs that match the pictures exactly, and there are a list of games that should be compatible with this, but you're definitely going to want to double and triple check just in case. But that would allow you to play essentially the entire Namco System 2 lineup. Which brings me to what I always have to say about arcade stuff and the price of them, is that if you're just somebody who's a casual retro gamer who wants to try out these games, this is not for you. I don't mean any disrespect to anybody by saying this. I just mean if you want to just try the games out, download some software emulators on your PC or phone and play them for free and just see if you like them. The purpose of stuff like this is hardcore arcade collectors want to use as much original hardware as possible, but they might not have the budget to buy every single Namco System 2 game, or they just might not be available. Some of them are crazy rare. Some of any arcade board would always be in some state of re-repair or broken or whatever else. So basically, I always say that not for the people who buy these things. I say this for everybody else, because the people who own this stuff already know that $550 isn't overpriced. It's what you just have to spend to be able to make these things happen. I just like to put it into perspective for everybody else. If you got an arcade machine at home or a badass super gun setup and you want original hardware, this is as close as you could get to actually buying every single arcade board that the Namco System Multi 2 supported. So definitely not overpriced. It's just expensive, but not for people who put it into context of their existing setups. Man, I'm a little loopy today, huh? Anyway, if you want to hear more from Darksoft, he recently did an interview with Arcade Legends. It's in Spanish, but there should be English subtitles available as well. So if you wanted to hear directly from the person behind all of this stuff, that's certainly a good way to do it. And of course, check out links in the description for where to purchase this. But also, just one last reminder, make sure your Namco System 2 board is compatible with this kit. Check references, check the installation manual, the forum thread, just double check. It's not going to take very long at all, and you should just be able to reference yours versus the pictures that you see. I wanted to follow up on a post from last week about the 20-inch Sony BVM remote mount kits. The creator, Rami, messaged me and sent me some info that I wanted to share. First of all, they got the final color, which is a much closer match to the original, but everything I said last week still stands. No two BVMs look identical, so you should just have realistic expectations. The same as if you bought two BVMs and you have them sitting next to each other, unless they came from the exact same place and were mounted in the same location, they're probably slightly different colored as well, so no surprise there for BVM owners. Rami also sent links to an installation guide, so that's all linked in the original post as well. But also, I talked about other monitors. And there are two major issues with making kits for different types of displays. First is that sometimes you can't get these kits at all. So in order to even make a homebrew version, somebody would have to donate an existing kit, which is very expensive and hard to find. So that means somebody would have to have one of these built into their D24 or A24, take it all apart, send this to Rami and then hopefully get it back, because you never know what's going to happen in shipping. When you model this stuff, things could go wrong. I'm not, accusing Rami of destroying stuff, but I'm just saying, like, stuff happens, right? So you may or may not get that back. But on top of it, there's a minimum order that needs to be placed. And since so many fewer people own stuff like the D24 and A24, it would be really hard to have something made from a metal shop in any kind of quantities, because you would have to do one-offs, which are very, very, very expensive. It's gotten way cheaper. I mean, 10 years ago, the price was like 5 times as much as it is today, but it's still, with laser cut machines and different ways to do it, it's still going to be far more expensive than doing like a run of 50 or a run of 100. So Rami's going to consider maybe doing an interest checklist for that stuff, but first and foremost, originals have to be found, which, once again, I mean, don't expect that. They just don't pop up on eBay very often. So somebody from the community would have to get in touch and help with that. But I guess on the flip side, this is good news for people who still have the 20-inch, either D or A series, because everything I said last week still applies. And it does look like this is going to be a one run of production only, and that's it. So I'm not trying to create false FOMO here for people, but honestly, if you have a 20-inch BVM and you were considering, do I want to buy one of these? Do I not? Is it that important? The under $200 price point, you might want to pick one up now and just have it just in case, because you might not ever be able to get one again, or it might be a much smaller production run and it might be 300 next time. So basically, if you own a 20-inch BVM, consider this. And if not, that's cool too. Hopefully you could just maybe talk to people. And if you know anybody with a D24 or an A24 that has one, see if they want to work with Rami and get one of these replicas made, and see if it's even possible to make those in small quantities at all. So not the best news for D24 and A24 owners, but thanks to Rami for being patient, answering all these questions, and trying their best just to do awesome stuff for the community and BVM owners. Before I go, I want to give a quick recap of the Domesday Duplicator Laserdisc ripping stream I recently did. But if you don't care about that stuff, please drop off. I don't ever want to waste anybody's time. But I did want to give a brief-ish update of the testing that I did, where I'm at, and where I'm going with it, because I think people are very interested in it. But it is very intimidating to start. Not just because the command line is required, but you need to know a lot of stuff, and I'm trying to relearn how to do it again in order to help simplify it for people. So basically, I took a Laserdisc player, which I'll get into hardware details in a second. I ripped just a section of a Video Essentials Laserdisc that has test patterns that I used, and then tried to process it, and then also scale it after the fact to see how it came out and see how it compared to a direct composite video rip through the RetroTink 4K Pro. And it was definitely a little bit better, but it was a lot more effort. And I'll run through a very, very quick overview here, but expect more videos in the future. I want to give the overview now, though, just to warn people about a couple of things, as well as to take any questions you might have. So I'll leave a list of those like I usually do. And that way, as I'm working on these videos, I can make sure to clarify things people are the most confused about, because it's definitely not intuitive at first. So first of all, hardware. You need a Laserdisc player, and I'll talk about VHS after we're done with Laserdisc, by the way, a couple months down the line at least. But you need a Laserdisc player that has been tapped for the raw RF signal. And I do not mean the cable that you screw on the back and turn your TV to channel 2. I mean the raw signal coming out of the player. And that is called an RF signal, which is confusing because so is the other one. But you need to have that tapped, and it needs to be done on a player that's in decent enough condition, and the signal needs to be of good integrity. That alone is a can of worms you can get into, or you could try to have one modded for you. More warnings on that in a second, by the way. Then you also need an FPGA-based box that connects to your computer that does the translation between the signal that's coming out of it and what you want saved to your computer. That uses, I believe it's the DE0 from Terrasic, but it's not the DE10. I might be wrong about the 0, but I'm definitely right that it is not the same FPGA dev kit that you use with the Mr. FPGA project, because I made that mistake years ago thinking I could just use one of my DE10s for it. That is not the case. You have to have that made properly, and that's basically the only hardware you need, a modded Laserdisc player and this kit. However, you have to be very careful as to where you get these, and also check compatibility. The biggest mistake I made by far was a friend of mine wanted a Pioneer Laser Active and thought, hey, maybe I could also contribute to doing laser active rips as well for the community. So I had picked up a Pioneer Laser Active and had Zaxor redo it, do a full cap replacement, a full refurbishment, and even do the RF tap. And Zaxor did an awesome job. And then after the stream started, some awesome person jumped in to make sure I didn't try to use it for laser active games, because apparently you can't use this model, this exact model, laser active, to do that. There's a link in the description. If you just go down and check out laser active ripping, that will show you exactly what to use and what not to use. So yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe this wasn't the best hardware to use, but you got to be worried about that. You got to choose it right. And if you want to have somebody else do it, I strongly recommend going to the Domesday Discord server and checking approved vendors. I had Krista do my friend's VHS a couple last year and a half ago, and that came out great. But the person who did this DE0 kit, geez, I really am off today. Sorry, everybody. The person who built this DE0 kit for me also sold my friend a modded Laserdisc player that never showed up. So they owe my friend like $1,500 because it was supposed to be a dual NTSC PAL Laserdisc player. And my friend got completely screwed over and might start one of those class action lawsuits from other people that got screwed over from this person. I don't know. I'll mention it. I try to shy away from drama like that, but that's a lot of money to get completely screwed over for. So check the approved vendors list if you want to have this stuff pre-made for you. And also just be aware that Laserdisc players are really heavy and hard to ship. So somebody doesn't only need to be able to tap the signal, test the signal, and make sure it works. They need to know how to pack it and ship it, which, just another shout out to Zaxor, did a badass job shipping this thing. It arrived perfectly. But so those are some very important warnings that you really need to know. And if you want to wait till the video comes out, fine, you could skip the rest of this. But here's the brief overview of what happened in the stream. I was joined by Harry, who's been rebuilding the wiki and doing a ton of work and was always very patient with me doing this stuff. And we ripped one test pattern from the Video Essentials Laserdisc. And that was as simple as it gets. Plug everything in, load up the little GUI, hit record in the GUI, hit play on the Laserdisc player, you're done. Then after that is done, you could test the file just to make sure everything's saved correctly, and then decide what you want to do with it. Harry then showed me a method that is super easy. You just take that file that you ripped and you drag it onto one of the batch files, and that essentially does FLAC compression in quotes because it doesn't compress anything, but that cut the file size in half, which is really great for people who want to do stacking, so they're saving their files or just want to save the originals. So that's an important thing. And then from that file, you could then encode it into a breaking out audio and video and essentially have it just be a 480i video. So all of that was really cool. I'm really happy that I was shown the FLAC version of it because I didn't even really know about that. And that's going to be a big deal for saving these archived versions of the files. Now, one downside that we found in the stream is that you need an extra file in the folder. That's all going to be worked out in the wiki, so don't worry about that if you're trying to follow the guide from now on. But one of the issues we had was because of that, and I was also told that sometimes when you rip just clips of something, the audio doesn't work. You need to do the full, side of the disc rip. So I'll be following up on that in a week or two to try to figure that out as well. And some of the other decoding options, I still don't quite get what I'm doing. And I think that's a problem. Much like the 45-minute long how to scale your home video that I put out, more than half of that video is just showing people what you have to look for in order to know how to do the deinterlacing and scaling. And I think while this is different, it's in a similar vein of there's a lot to learn to figure out what exactly you need to do for each of these commands. And the wiki is very detailed, but you have to really sink in and you have to, absorb one section. And when you move on to the next section of the wiki kind of assumes that you've already absorbed everything from the previous, which is fair, by the way, but it's kind of intimidating stepping into it. So the decoding side of things, we're working on, and we definitely needed to do a couple of different things to try to get the video right. So whenever you're ripping your laser discs, definitely do a little snippet, especially if it's something that you recognize. So like the test pattern I used for I've been using for 2 years straight now to do all the VHS ripping stuff. So it was very easy for me to recognize that and to see which method worked better. So once you have your little snippet and you figure out what's the best combination of ways to do it, then you re-rip the whole thing and apply those. Then you end up with the 480i file, and you could kind of decide from there what to do with it. The other thing that Harry showed me was the software StacksRip, which is equally as unintuitive as all of the other software out there that does stuff like this. However, it was able to provide results equal to Bravocon, and I think that might be worth me doing a whole other video on just how to use StacksRip. So all the stuff I still did in that Bravocon video, that 45-minute long one, all of that still applies. You still need to double check that your original analog to digital conversion of whatever it is that you're trying to scale was done properly. But then from there, you could use any of that software to apply the correct deinterlacing and scaling techniques for whatever source that you have. So thanks and shout out to Harry for doing that. So where I'm at now is I basically need to re-rip the entire Video Essentials disk, then reconvert it to FLAC, and reconvert that to a usable video and audio files and see where to go from there. And then I want to try stacking. And I think my guess for years now is that is going to be the absolute key feature of doing raw RF rips versus standard. Because if you have home videos, there's probably not going to be that much of a difference. However, when you're doing stuff like this, if you take the Video Essentials Laserdisc and you copy it once via whatever method, you're still going to get analog blips all over the screen from when information was missing, disk rot for Laserdisc, pit rot, I guess you should say, or, for VHS or magnetic tape media, it's always the same degradation there. However, if you take a bunch of the same exact one, so let's say we rip 10, 20 of these Video Essentials Laserdiscs, and then we take that FLAC compressed file and run them through software, it takes the best bits of each. So theoretically, you could end up with a digital 480i file that is better than would ever be possible with Laserdisc. And I think that's going to be the key for archival stuff here. So I want to practice on Laserdisc because it's a little bit easier than the VHS stuff. I have the Video Essentials and 2 Dolby Surround Laserdiscs that I picked up from Japan, or I had sent from Japan. I didn't go to Japan to get them. Wish I did, though. And I think that's where I want to start. And I'm hoping the people on the Domesday Discord will help stack those and see how far we can go with them. I might do some other fun ones, like maybe a Metallica one, just to be silly. But those 3, I think, are actually important and tools that we could all use in order to get that information and use these as test files for any stuff that we're doing. Then after that, I'll probably swing back and try to do a short video on it. And I don't know how I'm going to do that because there's so much into it. So I might just do stuff like just follow these steps and reference this if it doesn't work for you, just to have people feel more comfortable stepping into this. Because the more people we have working on it, the more contributions we get. Because as always, I think a GUI, a graphical user interface that controls all of this, is essential in getting more people on board. Because even though I grew up with the command line before GUIs even existed, that's what I was using, it's just so much easier to see a list of choices and to figure out what you want to do. And if an error comes back, you have a proper error message coming, and you could be able to debunk it that way and go through. So that's what I'm really hoping for the project, is somebody steps up and really tries to make a quality user interface for it, not just for the ripping part, but for everything else that happens afterwards as well. And the only way to do that is to get more of our fellow nerds on board. And the only way to do that is to make it a little easier for people to step into it. So that's where I come in. I'm not nearly as smart as the other people working on this, but I think I'm pretty decent at what I do, being the middleman. So I'm going to keep working on this. I'll start my middlemaning eventually on it, and hopefully my goal is to get a Laserdisc video out, a clear and concise one, not just these live streams, by the end of the year. If not sooner, but at the very least. And then next year, really focus on doing the same thing with magnetic tape media, specifically VHS and Video 8, because that's selfish. I have a bunch of my family's videos ripped as Video 8, so I want to do it with those as well. And it is possible. So stay tuned for more on this stuff. Thanks again to Harry for helping. And I'm going to try to give these 10-minute recaps every time I do these streams. You're welcome to watch them, but it's 2.5 hours of a lot of me making mistakes and doing the same thing over and over. So That's why, I always warn people, drop off the podcast if you don't want to hear it. But I think a lot of people are interested in the project and would rather hear a 10-ish minute update than sit through a 2.5 hour live stream. But you're always welcome. And especially while it's live, those are so much fun. Interacting with the chat, taking questions, getting warnings like don't use the player I bought, or you might, burn it out trying to do the wrong thing. So thank you again for that. But yeah, so thanks to everybody who hangs out, and I'll hopefully be following up with some of these streams soon enough. Well, that's it for this week. As always, thanks to everybody who watches, listens, plays nicely in the comments, and especially thank you to anybody who supports in absolutely any way, because it really is you who's keeping all this stuff going. So honestly, thank you so much, and I'll see you all next week. This week's Roundup is brought to you by Neo Paradigm Entertainment, connecting Southeast Asian influencers with opportunities in the West.